So Bernie Sanders wins the Iowa caucus. He won. They could say whatever they want. They tried to rig it. He got the most votes on the first ballot. He got the most votes on the second ballot. Okay, Bernie wins. Then, after the media props up Pete Buttigieg by declaring him the winner of the Iowa caucus, even though the majority of the results were not in, even though he did not win the most votes, they gave him a 7 to 10 point bump in New Hampshire. Okay, we know this. So Bernie wins the New Hampshire primary. The narrative, because the corporate media exists not to give you the facts, it exists to try and produce an alternate reality that maintains the status quo. You would think, oh, guy's raising record amounts of money. He's got a youth movement. He's got the most diverse coalition. Maybe the media would give him his due. Maybe, just maybe. Then, I mean, you looking at these polls? Are you looking at the polls that are coming out here? Nevada. Bernie, 7 points. 7 points lead over Biden. And by the way, caucuses are very, very difficult to poll. Hopefully the last poll that comes out before the Nevada primary doesn't get spiked like in Iowa because PD's campaign complains. Nevada also is pretty good state for Bernie, considering he is crushing all other candidates among Latinos. And Nevada, Jen, make sure I'm right on this, I believe Nevada is 25 to 30% Latinos. Big population. There you have Warren at 13%. We're going to get to Elizabeth Warren later because, honestly, you could call me a sexist if you want. It's time for her to drop out. And sorry, it's also time for Tulsi Gabbard to drop out. And sorry, those are my two for right now. Elizabeth Warren, it's time to drop out. Tulsi Gabbard, sorry, like you, got to drop out. This is not the time for a message. We need to coalesce around the progressive choice. I believe Tulsi Gabbard will do that sooner or later. Not so sure about Liz. Tom Steyer bought his way to 11% in Nevada, and Mayor CIA, who basically was propped up by CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Associated Press, to get an additional 10 points in New Hampshire. He's down at 10% because Latinos and African Americans don't like him. Then you look at South Carolina, and thank you, Colin Tooley, for making these graphics. We have Biden still in the lead at 28%, but minus 9. He's lost 9 points among South Carolina voters. 60% of South Carolina is African American. Then we see Bernie Sanders at 20% plus 6. Hey, if I'm the Bernie Sanders campaign and you sign me up today that I will lose South Carolina by 8 points, I will take that every day of the week and twice on Sunday. If Joe Biden cannot win South Carolina, he's probably going to lose Nevada. If he can't win South Carolina by double digits, that's it. It would be a victory if Bernie Sanders came within 8 points in South Carolina. I actually think he's going to do better than this poll, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. Then we have Tom Steyer, who has spent more money in Nevada and South Carolina than any other campaigns, and you see it reflected in the polls. Tom Steyer at 14%, minus 5, and then Mayor CIA there at 8%. He's up plus 4 in South Carolina. Again, you get a bump when you're falsely declared the winner of the Iowa caucus, but he's still at 8%. And then Warren, minus 2. Then we go down to Texas. 6 months ago, would anybody here think Bernie Sanders has a shot in Texas? Here is Texas Tribune poll. Bernie Sanders in the lead. Yes, margin of error. He's up by 2 points. But the fact that Bernie Sanders is even competing in Texas shows you the stuff the corporate media keeps putting out there is BS. It's not an issue. Bernie Sanders does not inherently repel conservative voters. He doesn't inherently repel moderate voters. What Bernie Sanders does is he expands the electorate. Why do you think he did so well in why do you think he's doing so well in Nevada? because it has a big Latino population, and he is winning among Latinos. Texas, huge Latino population. He is doing very, very well among Latinos. So all of these polls are showing you, if the Democratic Party wants to beat Trump, there's one candidate who not only performed very well, even though the media keeps saying, and I'm going to show you a despicable lie Chuck Todd told today in a little bit, the media keeps pretending that Bernie Sanders is not expanding the electorate, that he's not bringing out new voters. It's just a lie. He is. And you see it in the polls. Latinos, by and large, support Bernie Sanders in Nevada, in Texas, and California. Now we look at a national poll, Morning Consult. Bernie Sanders is up 10 points. 10 points over Joe Biden. And remember, just 2 or 3 months ago, this was reversed. Joe Biden was up 10 points. Bloomberg at 18%, which is completely bought. Buttigieg and Klobuchar, despite the media, showering them with attention, showering them with free coverage. Klobuchar and Buttigieg were both on the Sunday shows this morning. This is how the media works. They're trying to juice up the polls for their preferred moderate to right-wing Democrats. That's why all of these shows interview Amy Klobuchar breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They interview Amy Klobuchar more than any candidate the last few weeks. Buttigieg too. It ain't working. It's just not working. Look at their national numbers. Klobuchar, 5%. Warren, we're going to get to in a little bit. I want to zero in on the African-American vote here. Look at those Joe Biden, my support among African-Americans is my firewall. I hate that term in politics, but Joe Biden says, I have the most support among African Americans. By the way, it was mostly older African Americans, but I digress. Well, he's lost 25 points. 25 points among African Americans. That is toxic if you are Joe Biden's campaign. Bloomberg has bought his way, shockingly, to 22%. Mind you, this is without doing any interviews. This is without being in one debate. This is basically trying to hide. He does very, very little campaign events. And this is before the majority of the South Carolina voters who, Bloomberg skipping South Carolina. But this is before the majority of black voters really know anything about Michael Bloomberg's record. Sure, they might have heard about stop and frisk, but they don't know the details of every single thing because, by the way, it ain't just stop and frisk. So that number is going to go down, and it's going to go down quickly when he is forced to debate, when he is forced to do interviews, and it's just shameful. Honestly, what Michael Bloomberg is doing, to me, should be outlawed and illegal in a country. You should not be able to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on your own money to basically have a propaganda campaign to become competitive in a presidential race. It's disgusting. It should be outlawed. Sanders, +4 at 19% among African Americans. Warren, +1, 8%. And Buttigieg, getting all the way up there, +4 to 4%. 19% other or undecided. That's actually other/undecided. So there's a lot of African Americans open for business. A lot of them haven't decided yet. So to me, obviously Biden, total free fall. To me, the big opportunity here is Bernie. And if Warren, who I think should drop out, but putting that aside, if Warren does well in this Nevada debate, and if she does well in the Nevada caucus, she has room there to grow. But Bernie has the most room here. Bloomberg is like a hot air balloon. It's going to go up, but it's eventually going to pop because Michael Bloomberg's got equally, if not worse, record on black people than President Trump. And you might think that's a radical statement, but remember, President Trump had no political record before becoming president. Michael Bloomberg has more than 8 years. He's got 3 terms in New York City, and it was not good for black people. It was not good for Latinos, and it was not just stop and frisk. I also want to show you these numbers, and this is from a USA Today poll. So, shares your values. This is USA Today. Sanders, 64%. Warren, 55%. Biden, 53%. Buttigieg, 50%. Bloomberg, 46%. Hillary Clinton, in addition to NAFTA, which was a disaster, in addition to her pushing TPP, nobody nobody. She did not rank high in terms of favorability. She did not rank high in terms of share your values. She did not rank highly as far as trust, character, those kinds of things. Now we go to character. This is from USA Today. 40% have a high feeling on Bernie Sanders' character. 31% Biden, 30% Warren, 30% Buttigieg, 29% Bloomberg. So Bernie has all. Right now the polling is on Bernie's side, and I don't want to be. I want to be consistent, because when Bernie was down in the polls, I said I take everything with a grain of salt. All of these polls. I still take a lot of these polls with a grain of salt. But at least, when you look in the methodology, of these polls, and Status Coup has been sounding the alarm on this for 6 months to a year, you're starting to see the pollsters start to more evenly poll younger voters versus older voters. The reason Joe Biden was running away from this thing, according to the polls, 6 months ago, all along, was they were barely polling people under the age of 50, particularly Monmouth University's polls, Quinnipiac, and a lot of these, polls were oversampling older voters and undersampling younger voters. So now, as you actually see turnout, as you see in Iowa, contrary to what Chuck Todd was lying about today, which I'm about to show you, more people aged 17 to 29 came out in Iowa than they did in 2008 for President Obama, or candidate Obama at that time. That's a youth increase. New Hampshire, it was not the same. There's plenty of reasons for that, but at least in Iowa, you had a big uptick in young voters. In New Hampshire, you had an uptick in total turnout. You had more voters this time around than you had in 2016. So the turnout numbers, particularly among young people in Iowa and overall voters, is very, very good. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com, where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.